Hey, hello there. Welcome to Talking with Tony. I want to thank Daniel Cummings for joining us today. He's in Texas. I'm your host, Tony Jones. I want to thank Rob Brass for joining me on our episode number one of our 15th season. It was a fantastic episode. He, of course, the director of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And my thanks to Art and Jakes for letting us go on location. We're doing a little bit more of that on location. But today, I'm happy to have Daniel, who is in Texas, as I mentioned. Daniel, welcome to Talking with Tony. I love talking movies with you.
I love talking movies with you as well, Tony. I appreciate you having me back on. It's always a great time. And I definitely want to go back and watch that episode with Fellowship of Christian Athletes discussion because I was a part of that back in high school and middle school, and it was always a ton of fun.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Rob Brass, who you've read 6 weeks in the summer, is actually a character in the book as well, but he's in charge of over 200 schools. And in the book, he was instrumental in getting Miles involved in Fellowship of Christian Athletes. But in real life, he is all over the place in the state of Georgia, taking care of those advisors and those students, leading Bible studies and all. He's just a great asset for us here. I'm talking with Tony. He's a great friend. Daniel, I had something really cool happen to me last week. I was down in Destin, and the movie theater there, the AMC there, was showing the 65th anniversary of North by Northwest, which is my fourth all-time favorite film. American Film Institute, they has it ranked number 55. I think it's far better. And maybe it's not in the top 20, say, because Hitchcock had several movies where these mistaken identities, like North by Northwest, is based on. But I got to tell you, that was one of my favorite moments. And I go to the theater 3 times a week, but that's one of my favorite moments ever at the theater, being able to see that movie on the big screen.
I believe it. I'm pretty jealous. It was showing here for one night, and I was not able to make it to the theater. Unfortunately, I worked pretty late that night, but I can't imagine seeing some of those scenes on the big screen, especially that plane scene.
Yeah, that's the seminal moment. That's the iconic shot. And I think I got it pretty good. Of course, I've seen the movie so many times that I knew what was coming. And there was only about 15 people in the theater, and I didn't think, and most, no, almost all of them were older than us, except for people who had like their grandkids there with them. And I'm sure people didn't. I remember I was at seems like 75th or 80th anniversary of Casablanca. And I was inside one of the theater. A lady got the photo. She got a photo shot just when Isla turns around, that iconic shot there, and we all and everybody in the theater knew exactly what she was doing. She knew what she was doing because the timing was just impeccable. It was just perfect. So I'm going to tell you, 55. That seems high to me. How about you?
I love North by Northwest. It's not one of my favorite Hitchcocks. I don't think it's as good for me as Vertigo or Rear Window. There's just
Mm-hmm.
a couple things that put those two ahead of it for me. There's a scene or two in North by Northwest that I still have questions about. And I could talk about it, but it's spoiler filled, so I don't necessarily want to. But I love the movie. I love it. And one thing that I love most about it is when you watch something from that era, you know they're not hiding behind VFX. So when there's the scene with the crop duster plane trying to take out Cary Grant, there was no way to hide behind anything. They were actually filming with a real plane in a real field, and it was very dangerous. I love that movie so much for that reason. It's so practical.
And he still has a little bit of comedy in there as the stabbing scene and all. It's almost comical because that just wouldn't occur, wouldn't happen. And when he's on the run the way he is, there are two things that I do want to mention about the movie. I feel like the suit that Cary Grant has is the most impressive suit in the history of movies.
Why is that?
It just speaks. It's just, of course, he is such class too, and it's obviously fitted well, well fitted for him, and but perfect. But I just think it's the most impressive suit in any movie that I've ever seen. In fact, I think I'm going to get that suit. There are places online that if you Google Cary Grant suit North by Northwest, even though that movie was from 1959, you can get that suit. So here I'm sitting here talking about it. One day I'm going to wear it on Talking with Tony. How about that?
You absolutely should. I should warn you though. I think even if you put it on, even if I put it on, I wouldn't look like Cary Grant. Unfortunately, he is
No,
just annoyingly charismatic.
no, and to the point in North by Northwest, he's I don't he was probably in his 50s, young 50s if I'm just completely guessing here, maybe 55. Eva Marie Saint, the lead female, would have been probably, she's portraying herself as a 26-year-old. In the train scene, she says she's 26. She's probably early 30s at the time. So Cary Grant's even older than both of us and would still look more impressive. By the way, the other thing that I want to mention from the movie was Eva Marie Saint, who you may know from On the Waterfront. Our viewers may know her from that movie. Eva Marie Saint is still alive today at the age of 99 and will be 100 on July the 4th.
On July 4th. Wow. What a legend. Yeah, she's incredible. She is such a fantastic actress.
She showed up at the Academy Awards, it's probably 6 or 7 years ago, and she still looked elegant. She was 93 years old. She gave a speech out there, an introduction to probably an award, probably one of the historic awards or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. It's on YouTube. People can go on YouTube and look at that. I have you on as well. Jake Barton, our producer, he's in Newton, Georgia. He and I have been talking about. I love the ending of the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks. I wasn't crazy about the movie. It felt like it just went on and on. The whole Wilson thing got on my nerves after a while. But I think it's one of the coolest endings because the viewer sort of gets to make up their minds on what Tom Hanks does there. So Jake and I have looked at that ending a couple of times in the last week. Daniel, we want to invite you. You're in Texas. It's still going to be a hike for you. But we thought we'd film an episode of Talking with Tony on the YouTube variety there at that location and talk about where they filmed, and we'll show the shots and all. We'll show where she comes around and the road down to her farm and all. How about that? Will you join us out there sometime? Maybe in the fall when it cools off a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to be standing out in the Texas heat in July or August.
That sounds incredible. And I definitely support the plan of going out in the fall. Standing on the blacktop in July in Texas probably would be a little bit dangerous, but that sounds awesome. I'm all in.
On that day, we'll talk a little bit more about the movie Castaway, but where would you rank Hanks's performance as far as his movies, as far as Castaway? Does it make top 5 for you?
It's definitely technically probably one of the hardest ones he ever pulled off. But I think there are other ones that I like a bit more. There's something about him performing in scenes with other actors and the camaraderie he has with, whether it's his troops in Saving Private Ryan or whether it's the Russians in Bridge of Spies. He just has other performances where I love his back and forth with other actors. But Castaway is definitely a clinic that he puts on and how to carry an entire movie with a performance. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, his performance, as you were saying on that island, where I did think it went a little too far. When you just don't have another actor to feed off of, and you have to do that, that's incredibly difficult, and that just shows what kind of amazing actor that we've been able to watch all these years in Tom Hanks. You've called Tom Cruise the number one action star of our time, and I can't argue with that. I'm not a huge fan of his, but I can't argue with that. But Tom Hanks, another Tom, is certainly one of the most gifted. When I think about just tremendous actors that I've been able to see in the last 20, 25, 30 years, he and Denzel Washington come right to mind for me.
Absolutely. For most of my life, I would say Tom Hanks was my favorite actor, and he didn't move down or anything. I just saw more movies, and it's harder to choose just one single actor. But as far as dramatic everyman acting goes, you can't beat him. It just doesn't get better.
I think my favorite Hanks movie is probably Apollo 13. And that seems to shock people, but man, I enjoyed that movie when it came out in 1995. I was in Athens, Georgia, and I remember going to it at the movie theater there, and I have probably seen it 50 times since. And I thought that the crew was so well cast, the NASA crew that worked in communications and all, and while they were having all the disasters they were having. And of course, Auburn people like you and I are interested in that movie because Ken Mattingly was an Auburn graduate. He passed away. He passed away about 2 years ago now, but he was such positively portrayed in that movie as far as missing the flight, but then helping them get home safely as well. So Apollo 13 for me, if I don't think you'll take Forrest Gump, but I'm curious to see what your favorite Tom Hanks movie is.
I think I would have to go Saving Private Ryan, but good instinct saying Forrest Gump, because until I was about 15, I said that was my favorite movie ever created. I'm
Really?
not joking. Yep. It was a turning point for me. When I first saw that movie, I was about 12 years old and I watched it obsessively. I loved it so much. I still do. I've just again seen more movies. It has moved down a bit, but Saving Private Ryan is one that's always stuck with me. Especially his final moments in that movie are some of the most powerful acting moments I've seen in any movie ever. It's so compelling. It's unbelievable.
When Damon takes his family to Arlington and they see the significance of what he meant to Matt Damon and the sacrifice that he made for Matt Damon and all, that is an extremely touching moment. And I quote where a lot of people quote Tom Hanks, Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates and things like that from that movie. That's fine if they want to like quote that. I think often about the Saving Private Ryan scene where Matt Damon's like, "Tell me about your wife, pruning those rose bushes." He goes, "No, I keep that to myself. I live my life like that often." I saw someone this past week, beautiful young lady, walk out of Starbucks to her car. She was holding a book and she was holding 6 weeks this summer. And I started to stop and say, how do you like that book? So I did. I started to do it. I thought about it. I said, "How do you like that book?" She goes, "Well, I just started. I'm only on about 8 chapters." I said, "Is it good?" She goes, "It's really good." I said, "That's awesome. I'm thinking about looking into that." As I told Tara, that was my moment to say, "Hey, I wrote that. I'm glad you like that." But I just wanted to keep that to myself. That was my moment and all. And I thought that maybe she might not think that that was too genuine of me to do, too sincere. If I would have prompted her, she goes like, "Well, I'm not that much into it." I surely would have said, "Hey, that's my book." So I wanted to be fair to her as well. But I do that though, not only with a book, but with other things. That's my sort of my Saving Private Ryan Tom Hanks movie because he told Matt Damon, they had a little raffle thing going on, trying to find out what his job occupation was. He was a school teacher. It seems like he was from Indiana. But that with the wife, he wanted to keep to himself. And that's probably my favorite scene from Saving Private Ryan.
First of all, that must have been a surreal moment for you to see somebody walking around with a book with your name on it. That's awesome. I bet that was such a great feeling. It's on my shelf right there. Looking at it right now. It's awesome. Can't wait to put the next one right next to it.
Thank you.
But yeah, that is a fantastic scene. That's one of the best things about Saving Private Ryan and the way that Spielberg directs even the scenes of dialogue is they're just as compelling and exciting as the action scenes. The storming of Normandy is one of the most insane combat scenes I've ever seen, and it's not even the most memorable thing in the movie. These quiet moments where they're just sort of regrouping after they've almost died together. Those are the most powerful scenes of the entire movie and the ones that really linger with people like me who haven't seen combat.
And for some reason, whenever I get my house and I grab a cup of coffee, that I I have a habit of drinking coffee and not drinking all of it. I'll stick it in the refrigerator, I'll warm it up, and I'll drink the rest of it. Not, but maybe I've left it out a little too long, and it reminds me of when they got to that city and there was a coffee thing. Tom Hanks was pulling on the lever just to see if there was anything there, and I do that as well. But that is a great film. It doesn't surprise me. I guess I was a little surprised that Forrest Gump was one of your favorite movies ever, but I also got to remember you grew up, I believe, in Alabama, so that probably meant something to you. The fact that a lot of that were staged in Alabama, also.
It definitely did. And seeing a Southerner with a heart of gold portrayed in a movie, you just don't see very often, particularly in that time period. He is a bit of he's a bit dull sometimes, sure, but he has a heart of gold, and I love that it was a nuanced movie that approached pretty big topics, but with a lot of class and without shying away from telling the actual story. It's dark, but at the same time, there's a lot of hope to it, and there will never be a time where I watch the final 10 minutes and don't fight back tears. It's a tough one to get through for sure.
No, well, thank you for sharing that sentiment. I saw it at theater, I believe, 3 times, and I've seen it, maybe 7 or 8 times since. But it was one of those movies that stayed for such a long time at the movie theater as well. Like if you missed it for 2 months, don't worry about it. It's still playing there. If you needed some Friday night entertainment, maybe you'd already seen it. You could still go back and watch it again. And you could, I'll probably just with you talking about the final 10 minutes, I'll probably go back and check it out in the next couple of weeks as well. I have such a great appreciation for those moments and for those wonderful films. And I got to tell you, I haven't seen too many wonderful films lately as we transition into present time. Daniel, I've said before here on Talking with Tony, and I say to my friends often, I'm so sick of Hollywood not producing enough original material. I didn't have a problem with the remake of The Fall Guy because I like The Fall Guy. That's a little unfair for me to say when I do have a problem with the remakes, The Planet of the Hollywood Apes, and all this. But I'm so tired of such and such part seven and such part five, and all. I want to see those new movies. One movie that I have been so pleased with in the last month, though, and I've been to the theater 10 times, was Unsung Hero. And if people haven't seen it, they need to see it. It's a true story. It's a great story about this family that came over from Australia to Nashville, to your former city that you lived in. But the woman is actually the hero, the mother of the family. She's the straw that stirs the drink. She keeps the family alive. That's the movie that I really enjoyed the most. I was disappointed in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I was disappointed overall in Fall Guy, though it did have like 5 moments of homage to the original series, and even had a little tribute to $6 Million Man caught in there just briefly, which was Lee Majors. Also, I've been all these movies, Argyle, all these movies that I've seen in the last couple of months and all. I just literally a little bit down, except for Unsung Hero. What has been the high point of summer films for you? Or we're not even just summer, really. That's not fair. How about I could say this year of 2024? What has been the high point of the 2024 movies for you?
A couple that I really enjoyed. I was also a bit disappointed by Fall Guy. I thought it should have been a lot more fun than it ended up being, but I enjoyed it. I do hope that more people go and see it because it is more original than a lot of what we're getting, and it's real stunts. It's a lot of good stuff. But I loved a movie that actually ran the festival circuit last year, but didn't actually hit theaters broad in the U.S. until this year, and that was called The Promised Land. It's starring Mads Mikkelsen. It's a Danish movie. I loved it from start to finish. It's a little over 2 hours long, and every second counts. It's incredibly well written. It's a historical epic, kind of like There Will Be Blood, the kind of movie we don't get very often anymore, with a powerhouse performance. It's incredible. I loved it so much. So that was definitely a high point. Then I loved, and I know this is a bit controversial. I haven't even gotten your opinion on it yet, but I loved The Challengers from Luca Guadagnino. I thought it was a fantastic sports movie. Even though it wasn't entirely focused on tennis for the entire time, I thought the tennis scenes were incredible. I thought the acting was really great. And again, it felt like it should have been based on a novel or something, but it was an original screenplay. And like you just said, we don't get too much of that. And if we want to get more of that, we need to maybe stop going and seeing the 87th Marvel movie in the past 3 years and start seeing challengers, even if it's not necessarily our thing. We have to vote with our money for the movies that we want to see. And so I've loved those two quite a bit. And there are some blockbusters that I can talk about in a second if you want to, that I've also loved, that I thought did a great job of not just resting on the laurels of previous blockbusters.
And I'll tell you that tomorrow night, Jake and I we thought about that, and I've kind of leaned no about the Champions movie because I wasn't sure if I would buy into them as tennis people. But now what you just gave was a great endorsement of the tennis part, which has me interested, and I'm aware of the other story going on there. So that's interesting. That Late Night with the Devil, I thought was pretty good too. That exceeded my expectations. Also, seeing that. Tell me about the. We do have time for you to mention these blockbusters. Tell us about those.
I know you were not a big fan of the first movie in this franchise, but Dune Part 2, it's going to show up big at the Oscars, so you need to see it because it's going to be nominated a lot, and it's probably going to win a lot because it's not up against Oppenheimer this year. I don't know what it's up against that's going to be beating it in these technical categories. It is an achievement. No matter whether you enjoy it or not, the spectacle is undeniable. I mean, to look at that movie, every single frame looks, first of all, authentic, but it also looks like it doesn't take place on planet Earth. It sells the entire thing really well. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it because I didn't like the first one so much, but you're completely right about it's getting the awards. Of course, Sean Lee gets nominated for just about everything he does anyway, right?
I mean, Denis Villeneuve.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I said the completely wrong thing. I was thinking about another.
He's coming up. He's got a movie coming up this summer as well.
Yeah, he did. So here's something I got to see. Okay, you're right. I will see that. It's been fumbling around still. This won't surprise you. It's been fumbling around the Auburn Theater still here in the last couple of weeks, and it's obviously done well at the box office. And you named it. It's a blockbuster. We don't get blockbusters, very often. In fact, Daniel, this is a little off the subject. I would talk. People are just amazed. I go to the movie theater 3 days a week, and they'll go like, "I haven't seen a movie since the Top Gun movie." I hear that a lot. People just don't go to the movies, but you and I, we're a dying breed. We still love hitting the theater.
Absolutely. I saw a stat recently where it said in order for Hollywood to sustain itself currently, every single moviegoer needs to get, I think it was like 3.3 tickets per year, and they're not meeting that benchmark. And I was thinking, I'm covering for about 35 of you guys, and you can't keep up. It's unbelievable because I love going to the movies. I love it so much, especially the second half of the year is where it kind of becomes unhealthy. That's when the movies that I'm really interested in start to come out. That's award season. The first half of the year, I'm really trying to be very selective and trying to save money. But once about September hits, it's constant. I'm taking every opportunity I can to get out there and go see the movies I've been looking forward to, and you just can't beat it when you're at home and you have your phone taking your attention and you have maybe work in the other room. You're getting emails over the weekend on your computer, and you have your dog needs to go outside. Everything's taking away from the experience. But when you're dialed in with a bunch of people who showed up to watch the same movie on a huge screen with blaring speakers, you can't beat it. You just can't beat it.
And full disclosure, I had the movie theater to thank for my friendship with you. If it were not for the movie theater, I would not know you because I met you at the movies. And those final 3 months of writing 6 weeks this summer, that was my outlet. When I'd go to the movies, I just, could zone out, not think about that, not think about anything else. Kind of what you were just saying, have my Coke Icy, spending 2.5 hours, less than watching Oppenheimer or a couple other movies, watch 3 hours at the theater and enjoy it. There was another blockbuster I believe you were going to mention also besides the Dune 2.
One more, and I'll keep it pretty quick, but I saw it 2 nights ago, and that is Furiosa. I don't know if you were a big fan of Fury Road when it came out in 2015, but that is
Yeah, well,
also it's going to show up at the Oscars because that one and Doom both took home about 7 apiece. And this one, although it's not as technically perfect as Fury Road was, I think it's incredible. I saw Edgar Wright, the director of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, Baby Driver, a bunch of other great films. He compared it to Ben-Hur. And it's actually kind of an apt description. I don't think it's going to be as classic as Ben-Hur, but the epic scale of it and how it takes place over the course of generations and tracks a character from the time they're very young to on their path of revenge into their 20s. I thought it was incredible. It's a great action movie. It feels original, even though it's the 5th movie George Miller's made. It's spectacular. Yeah, George Miller's been working on this universe for about 50 odd years now, and it just keeps getting better.
And thank you so much for mentioning the Promised Land. I believe is the name of the film, the Danish film. Because as you know, each year I write. I wait till about September, but I write about down on a sheet of paper about 45 films that I try to see that all came out that year. I check them off as we go. It's some, as you alluded to a little earlier, aren't going to come out till between Thanksgiving and December 31st anyway, because we get so many of them in the theater that are going to be in the award season. But that was one that I had written down 2023, and it has no check mark on it because I could not locate it. I don't know what happened to it. Makes complete sense what you said. Made some rounds in 2023, but it's really available now in 2024. Since I was interested in that movie, your endorsement means a lot to that, and that's just something that it becomes must see for me now.
I can't recommend it more highly. I saw it the first week of the year. Or the first month of the year. It was in the theater near me, and I was the only one in the theater. It barely made any money. It's phenomenal. It's a historical epic movie, historical fiction, obviously, but it's targeted towards adults. It's violent. It's incredible. It's super satisfying. It moves fast. There's always something going on, and it's just the kind of movie that we don't get too often anymore. And I hope at least when it hits video on demand, which is where it is now, I hope it can make enough money to where these movies don't just completely die out.
I want to take a few minutes with you and just recap the Academy Awards. You and I's predictions were on the money, and I will say that when one of the things I remember saying on our show is I was terrified for Lily Gladstone that she had won all the awards in that category of Best Supporting Actress leading up to the Academy Awards. Now I was terrified she was not going to bring that home. And I understand, I get it, but I still feel terrible for her, Danny.
I do too. I must say it's incredibly hard to not be happy for Emma Stone because she is extremely charismatic and seems genuine. She seems like a very kind person to me. I know it's Hollywood and they're all very good actors, but she seems very likable. And so it's hard not to be happy for her. But at the same time, I really wanted it to go to Gladstone. And let me say, the fact that that was the only chance Killers of the Flower Moon had at winning an Academy Award. Scorsese has now been nominated, or his film's been nominated 26 times over the course of his past four movies and have won zero. Not one, no, not one win has gone to a Scorsese movie. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy to think about. That was their best opportunity. She was their best opportunity and came up short. And she won everything else leading up to that moment. Great stat. Dynamite, we call it in the business, Dynamite dropping in there on the 0 for 26. Be interesting to see what happens, with him moving forward. That's going to stop eventually. It's like Dwayne Lucas in the Triple Crown horse races. He did win the Preakness. He's 88 years old. He's going to keep going until he passes away. Scorsese is not done. We're going to still see more movies from him. I'm hoping that we'll still see some more from Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is this iconic guy that was his biggest moments were even before I was around. He's still with us, and he still puts out as director. He puts out great films. I was thinking about like his acting. It's like what he was known for. Is he actually before both of us were around, but great stat there on Scorsese. I do want to say that I thought the holdovers deserved better than what they got. You were high on Anatomy of a Fall that you were high on? Is that
And Zone of
correct?
Interest. I loved that and Zone of Interest. You could be talking about either.
The zone of interest for me was difficult to watch. I'm not because Tara loves she loves Germany and she it really has done a lot of research. And when we were over there, we went to Munich and all. She wanted to go to some of the camps. She went to Dachau and all. And that we went to the Olympic Stadium and it affected me because I knew that uh, the Israeli athletes were able to walk in the opening ceremonies in that stadium of the Olympics, and they were dead by the time of the closing ceremonies because it was the Palestinians, who Black September was the name of their terrorist group that kidnapped many of their weightlifters and wrestlers and a coach or two and shot them. So I was wiped out after doing that. But the next day she rebounded and she wanted to go over there. She reads a lot of books about it and all. So I watched that movie, but I still found the subject matter troubling. Fascinating story because there's these kids playing right next to really where this is going on. I mean, it's a movie it's worth watching, but it just took a lot out of
It absolutely drained me. I was again the only one in the theater when I saw it, and the music that played over the credits was just haunting. And I walked out. I was in a theater in a mall. The mall had closed for the night, so I was the only one. My footsteps were just kind of echoing down the hallway as I'm walking out in the dark. It was disturbing. It was a horrible experience, but it should have been. It absolutely should have been. And you're right. It is crazy to think that they did just have their children playing and growing up and doing school right down the street from where they were doing these horrible, unspeakable things. We like to think of these villains as always being on, always being evil, but that's not true. They lived lives and they compartmentalized the worst things they were doing. It was just work to them. It's crazy.
as we analyze those Academy Awards. And we're not saying the Academy got anything wrong by shutting out Scorsese. It's a shot to have that done. I'm not saying that it's wrong not to give that to Lily, not to give it to Emma Stone just because I wanted Lily Gladstone to have it. What we do agree on, what we were both so high on leading up was Oppenheimer, his best film, and it was the big winner overall for the night as well. So they nailed that. They got that right.
I agree. It absolutely swept. And it's rare that you see a biopic like that that also picks up the technical awards. Like we had The King's Speech over a decade ago, and that picked up the acting noms and screenplay and picture, but this picked up those as well as score and edit and cinematography. It was just such a well-made movie.
before we wrap it up, will you give us a film or two that is releasing this summer that you are looking forward to? It could be out in June, July, or August, because most of the majority of those films that will be up for the Academy Awards, up for the other awards, will come out between Thanksgiving and December the 31st. So, is there anything that our audience can just be looking forward to hit their theater this summer and rush out and see?
Yes, absolutely. So this movie was supposed to come out in 2023, but it got pushed back because of the strikes. And that's Jeff Nichols directing The Bike Riders, Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, Jodie Comer. I've been so excited about this movie for about 4 years since it was announced. It's loosely based on a real life motorcycle club. And it's been going for so long with the festival releases that got back in, I think, at TIFF in Canada last year. I'm just afraid it's running out of gas and people are kind of hearing its name trickled over the course of an entire year. So please show up for it when it comes out. Make it have a splash at the theaters. It looks awesome. And Jeff Nichols honestly hasn't disappointed yet. He's an incredible director. I'm also really excited about Hitman from Richard Linklater with Glenn Powell from Top Gun Maverick.
Yep.
Obviously, he's blown up since then. I think that movie is going to be great. I'm a big fan of Richard Linklater, and it looks really good. And there's plenty more coming out this summer. I'm looking forward to Kevin Costner's Horizon 1 and 2, big, massive Western movies he's been working on. And then there's a movie called Maxine from Ty West, which comes after X and Pearl. It's a horror movie coming out soon that looks really good, I think. And then one that I'm excited about but a little wary of is A Quiet Place Day One. I really like A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2, but whenever these franchises get too big, they have a tendency to go too far, and I'm afraid that could happen here. But the director made Pig with Nicolas Cage in 2021, which was a really good movie. So I'm hoping it delivers.
It was a great movie. That Nicolas Cage Pig movie that she's done. I think that movie that you just also said, the first Quiet Man, or however they're saying, it's coming out soon, because in the movies I've been going to lately, it's in the previews. So I think it's about to hit before some of those others. I thank you so much for mentioning Glenn Powell too, because when I left that Maverick movie a couple of years ago, I thought his acting was better than anybody's in the film. I thought he seems to be the guy picking up the roles since that movie.
Yeah, he's just got brain melting charisma, and I think he should be getting all of the star roles these days because he's incredible. He's a great actor.
Daniel, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for coming in and joining me. I'm going to have you again before we take that road trip, but I just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom of the films with me today.
You can call it wisdom, but it's more of an addiction. But I really appreciate you having me on. And we'll talk about 6 weeks this summer and maybe 6 weeks this fall. Is that what it's called?
Fall and Recover will be the.
We'll talk about that next time as well, for sure. I know we didn't spend quite enough time on it this
That's
time.
All right.
I appreciate you having me on.
That's all right. All right, folks, that's all the time we have. But for Jake Bart and for Daniel Cummings, I'm Tony Jones. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with John.